Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's my pleasure today to be here with Barrett Reed, who's got it's a big day for you today, Barrett, and
Yeah,
you
it
have a
is.
lot to say.
Yeah.
So Barrett Reed, Santa Barbara Planning Commissioner, why don't you tell us what you want to tell us about what's going on with you?
Thanks, Josh. This is very exciting for me. I think it was one of your earliest podcasts that you invited me onto, and that was shortly after I joined the Planning Commission. And I was thinking about that this morning. I think it was offline, but we were talking about your family. We were talking about family in general. And if you remember, my wife was just about due. And I was listening closely to what you would say about your kids. And I think this is apparent to a lot of people when you talk about your family. And it was so clear the deep love you have for your family. And what I was really focused on was your kids. And I remember I thought I could relate to that. You know, my wife was pregnant. She's about to give birth. We're going to have our first baby, our baby boy. And I thought I could relate to that. And it was days or weeks after that interview that we went into the hospital and Thatcher was born. And thinking back to that conversation, I realized in a very real way, I couldn't relate. And I can now. And it's life-changing.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the race, but honestly, this is a big part of why I'm running. And I grew up really quick in that process. And we have another one on the way.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, just by way of background, you know, I launched the podcast and you were, I think, the second person I ever interviewed. And I thought, oh, he's on the Planning Commission now and people are talking about him. It'd be kind of cool to get his views on Santa Barbara issues. And I recall that conversation. And yeah, I do that. It's sort of like, I don't recall what I did before I had kids. I feel as though a lot of time was wasted. And now, as you know, once you have children, it's the most important thing in the world and nothing else really matters. So,
right.
You know, other things matter, but not to that level. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your next journey here?
Yeah. So this is my announcement. This has been something Caitlin, my wife, and I have talked through extensively. And today I'm announcing my candidacy in District 4 for City Council.
Yeah.
And many things had to come together to get to this decision. And I've been so honored to have the experiences that I've had in this city. The why is what we've been asking ourselves. And I'm born and raised here. This is Santa Barbara's my hometown. And it's simply just too special to me to not take this next step. My family's here. Now I'm raising my family here. My friends were here. The friends I grew up with, for the most part, are gone. It's too expensive. But this is my life. And being on Planning Commission, albeit less than 2 years, coming up on 2 years, has convinced me that I can do this work. I can serve our city to my fullest capacity. I have the time to do it, the resources to do it. I've learned that I believe I have the ability to do it. I have the passion to do it. And when I think about where we're at as a city, the best city in the world. I see that we are at from my perspective, the most important moment in the city of Santa Barbara in my lifetime. And there's too much at stake for me not to make this effort. And I think it is more necessary now in the context of what I remember in city government for there to be a change in leadership. And so I'm running, and I'm optimistic about this city. There's absolutely no question, but optimism alone will not fix the problems that our city is facing. And I think, especially when I look back over the last 4 years, our city's lacked vision, direction, leadership, coordination, cooperation, and every resident of Santa Barbara, including every resident of District 4, is paying that price. So I've made this decision and fully committed to it, and I'm excited.
Yeah, well, it's definitely big news. There's been a lot of rumor, buzz, talk about your candidacy. You know, is Barrett going to jump into the race? And you're pretty well known in the community, and you've been on the planning commission, and so people are familiar with you. And so the idea that you would run for council is exciting to a lot of people, and a lot of people are talking about it. And you're kind of that a little bit of that prototype person when, you know, long before district elections, the city decided to put to voters whether to pay council members. And it's not a lot, but I think they get paid in the mid 40s or so. And one of the reasons was so that you get young people, like working families, you know, and, you know, obviously you have other work, you have other jobs, but the idea is the council should not be just a place for the retired people. It should be a place for young people who are starting out here, who are having to make decisions about how they're going to live and the lifestyle they're going to live, to also be leaders on the council. And so you're sort of like that perfect prototype person. You know, it's like, hey, he's a young family guy who's wanting to run for council. And, you know, for a long time, that wasn't the type of person, you know, who would run. What are your issues, Barrett? Like, what do you want to focus on? What's your campaign going to be based on?
Yeah. I'm trying to distill it to a couple important things. There's subcategories to each. But I think for most of us, homelessness is at the top of the list. And before I mention the next one, I can speak to that a little bit. So let's take Alameda Park. That's in District 4. It's where my parents always took me and my sister growing up to play. I love Alameda Park.
Did you play at Kids World? Are you that young?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Josh, we're not going to take our son there to play.
No.
It's off limits. Mm-hmm. And that's sad. Mm-hmm. And so I see two types of homelessness in our city. I work downtown. My office is downtown. I see it every day. And I see people struggling with homelessness who may not be receptive to services the first time someone approaches them, but these are people who will accept services. And they are people who need and want help. And those people we have to help. I see another category of homelessness, which is predominantly a lawless type of homelessness. And we've all experienced this, and it's only getting worse. And I'm talking about the type of homelessness that intentionally sets fires, the type of lawlessness that vandalizes property and businesses, that keeps businesses from wanting to open in Santa Barbara and helps shut them down. The lawless element that exposes themselves in public in front of women and children. And that is a threat to our community. It's a threat to the basic public health and safety of our community. And I will be strong on homelessness. That said, I deeply care about people who experience hardships, and some of the most challenging hardships. And for the last 10 years, I've served as a volunteer with the Sheriff's Department at the Santa Barbara County Jail. And I go in and I'm present with inmates. I'm with them where they live. And many of those have experienced homelessness. And it's some of, if not the hardest work I've ever done. And, I go in every week. I haven't been able to during COVID, which has been really hard. But I'll be honest, it's hard for me to go in there because the work is so challenging. I can tell you every time I leave, I am filled with joy and hope because people's lives change. And it's not just the work in the jail, it's when these folks get released and we make huge efforts to stay connected to them. We build trusted relationships with them and we get them back on their feet. So with that on the ground experience, the challenge breaks my heart, as it does for many. But I feel that the issue in Santa Barbara is fundamentally solvable, not just manageable, but solvable. And so I look to cities in California who have been able to do that better than others. And what impressed me so much, January of this year, so we're still at the peak of the pandemic, and Bakersfield announces that we are the first city in the state of California to be at functionally zero for homelessness, for chronic homelessness, the toughest category of homelessness. Mm-hmm. And Bakersfield, for a long time, has had a strategy and an action plan to implement that strategy. And our city needs to be proactive in that. And we have had a reactive leadership, not just on homelessness, but on many, many issues. And I would not call reactive decision-making leadership. It's simply reaction. And I think we make our worst decisions as a city when we are reacting to the next crisis or problem, rather than getting ahead of it like Bakersfield has done. And I won't go into too much detail on this. I'm sure there are going to be many conversations we'll have over the next few months, but the things that have impressed me most about their program, and they've contracted with this group, Community Solutions, who we need to start talking to now. So in our reactive style of leadership, or lack thereof, decision-making, let's take the Loma fire, for example. We had to scramble to find capacity for homeless living in dangerous encampments, which is a less than perfect solution. It's not a solution. It's just a reaction to a major problem. Well, Bakersfield worked with their housing authority, close partnership with their housing authority. And I can tell you, I can assure you that our housing authority is better equipped than any other housing authority in the country, in the state. And they created a master lease program. So they went to hotels, motels, landlords, It didn't even matter if the apartment was successful. They got the funding through a grant from Kaiser Permanente to master lease. So overnight, there's capacity. Mm-hmm. And they had a place to put people. They didn't have to build emergency encampments in the downtown to take one problem and then make another problem worse. So I'll end there on the topic of homelessness, but it is a solvable problem, and it's time our city approach it that way. Second, I can no longer sit back. I say sit back because Planning Commission, we're just an advisory group to council. We make recommendations, decisions on projects, but policy, we don't have that authority. We're in a perpetual state of decline in our downtown. Homelessness is a big part of that. I mean, we have to, it's the most awkward way to get to your office in the morning, or your retail store, or your bar, your restaurant. You have to step over people living at your storefront. If we can't solve homelessness in our downtown, it's not going to get better. It will continue to decline. And before the pandemic, business owners in our downtown core were polled on their struggles. What are the biggest issues for you? And it was homelessness. It was homelessness. And a big part of that was the lawless element of homelessness and the lack of our enforcement of our ordinances. We have a sit-lie ordinance on State Street. We don't enforce it because we don't have a place to put these people.
Right.
During the pandemic, those same business owners were asked, what's the biggest issue? Once again, it was homelessness. Nothing's changing. It's just been exacerbated. In terms of the downtown, let's take Paseo Nuevo, the topic of housing. I think housing is appropriate in our downtown. I think our downtown needs that energy that comes with people living there and working there and living their life there. And we've had problems at our Macy's property and Nordstrom property for a long time. We've known about that. But it's always been put on staff to come up with creative solutions to work alongside people who control these assets and try to solve some of our biggest problems. But this needs to fundamentally be something that council is involved in. And that takes a vision and the courage to execute upon that vision. And it's my work. I revitalize commercial, struggling, declining, dilapidated, often historic commercial property, primarily in our downtown core. And often I work with property owners. I partner with them. And we envision together, and then we execute on that vision. Our city is not doing that, and our council needs to do that. I see that as a primary role of our city council to lead us, but I don't see it happening. I think our slow response to the struggles in our building and planning department, streamlining our permitting and review process, it's just not happening. And I'm not going to point the blame primarily on the staff, because there's so much of this they can't change. We spent, $80,000 on a Novak consulting study. And I am fighting right now at the Planning Commission level to adopt their core recommendations. And oh my goodness, is it a struggle. And I don't see it happening. And businesses will not come to Santa Barbara unless we do something. I could go on. There are many elements of downtown revitalization, and those are just a few. But I think we can no longer continue in this never-ending cycle of visionary documents and costly consulting reports and then just put them on the shelf and not act on them. And that's our taxpayer dollars going to reports. And I just think there is a fear to lead. And it's time that changes.
Let me ask you a little bit of a tough question here. You're going up against an incumbent, okay? And we know that incumbency in elections has value. It has weight. Usually incumbents have to do something kind of really bad in order for voters to say, let's make a change. Can you talk a little bit specifically about, if you're a voter in District 4, why are you the better choice than what's there now?
Yeah. I'll touch back on some of what I've said. Yeah. I see a fear in our leadership. And I understand that. It's tough to lead in a city, especially the greatest city on the planet. It's tough to be a leader. And there's a fear response to that. And I think what that translates to is reactive decision making, not a proactive vision or strategy. I see that with homelessness, as we've talked about. I see that with crime. Specific to District 4, we've got a high level of property ownership, a lot of pride in property ownership. This isn't a political issue from my perspective when we're seeing an increase in property crime. And I want to get back to the core functions of our local government. Public safety. And I loved your interview with Doss Williams the other day. And Doss was speaking about criminal justice reform, I believe, incarceration, funding for law enforcement. And I know this is a polarizing issue, but I am focused. I am only speaking in the context of our community, and specifically right now, District 4. It's a target for property crime. And Doss said when we shift resources away from law enforcement to find alternatives, statistically, it does not result in a increase in violent crime. In our county, I think that I may disagree. I think there's a rise in violent crime, homicides, but he then went on to say something pretty interesting and very honest, which I appreciated. He said the statistics do indicate that there is a rise in property-related crime. So to have leaders voting against a new police station, to delaying the inevitable, in my opinion, to putting our law enforcement at risk in a building that is seismically unsafe. It has been for 30 years, almost my whole lifetime. A building designed for 80 people that houses over 200. And I don't want reactive decision-making if there is a natural disaster that brings that down upon our police department. That needs to be brought to fruition and quickly. And our police department, our law enforcement needs the resources to protect us against crime. I mean, we have at the state level, we have 70 plus, just under 80,000 inmates that are now eligible for early release. And over 60,000 of those have been convicted of violent crimes. And some of those will descend upon our community. And we have to be prepared for that. We have to be proactive in that, not just reactive. I also see a lack of courage to act on vision. Like I said, this never-ending cycle of visionary documents, costly reporting, consulting reports that we don't take action on. And that affects every aspect of the core functions of our local government. This permit streamlining, that's a big deal to property owners, residential property owners, primarily in District 4, who can't afford those delays. It's just not fair. And something I've learned, Josh, on the Planning Commission that I've really learned is the importance of building coalitions, because it's not one person making the vote, making the decision. It's 7. And I am so proud of our Planning Commission. And it's made up of some very different people with very different ideas, but we work so well together. And we have super majorities, I would say the vast majority of the time, on decisions. And we coordinate, we communicate, we cooperate, we're kind to each other. And I'm tired of seeing the contentious nature of our council. And you would think with 7 elected members of city council from the same political party, they'd be able to better work together. And that hasn't been the case.
Yeah. Hey, can you talk a little bit about you? I mean, I know you're a local kid. You grew up here and you're raising your family here. You've been on the planning commission, but can you talk about your upbringing, your youth? What do you do specifically? Give us a sense of who Barrett Reed is, sort of behind the planning commission.
Yeah. So we was born in Santa Barbara, spent a lot of my early years with my family in West Beach, so downtown. And we still, as a family, have that home. It's a rental home. I went to Santa Barbara Junior High and high school, and for a short time, City College. And then I went to USC. I didn't like USC. I loved City College. I loved City College. My first business was in high school. My best friend and I in junior high had a passion for older cars, and they were very cheap at the time. And when we got into high school, got our driver's license, we were able to buy our first 1983 Classic, and we resold that, and we got our dealer license, and it was easy to get loans then, and that got us started in business. And we both couldn't wait to get out of LA. We both went to USC together. We were buying and selling single family properties there. And then the economy collapsed. We got out of it relatively unscathed, and ran our car business in town. And the properties that we had for restoring cars, those first properties we were able to purchase. And 3 of those are in the funk zone. And before anything was happening there, we took a chance. We thought this is a pretty special place. And so we converted our warehouses into breweries, wineries, restaurants, creative spaces. And that was one of the riskiest things I've done, because I didn't have the money to fail. And that's led to a business that I absolutely love, which is investing in real estate, primarily in Santa Barbara, and revitalizing it, bringing life back to it. And they're often properties that have been vacant for a long, long time. And unlike the cars, where it may serve an individual, this work serves the neighborhood that it's in, and it's fulfilling. I love it. And we don't see ourselves as developers. We don't add square footage, and we repurpose what is already great. And it's not that difficult, because the properties we have in Santa Barbara, what we have in Santa Barbara is so fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, isn't that what the preservationists have wanted? Is how do you, what's the word? Restore what's already there. There's a term for it. But
repurpose, adaptive reuse.
Yeah, adaptive reuse. How do you take what's there and not being used, and do it in a way where it can get some use and some life out of it? And particularly with the downtown, that's what strategically, that's, we're sort of seeing some of that. And I know there's lots of ideas to do more of that. But, I think that's a method that a lot of people support. And then you're a new father, you touched on that to start off. So maybe you can indulge me, but what's life been like for you the first year? Are you getting any sleep? You look like you're getting more sleep than I am. I have a 7-year-old and I don't get any sleep, but what's it been like?
It's been the best.
Yeah.
When we were in the hospital for the delivery, it was March 10th of 2020, and we were shut off from the media. My wife was induced, and we were in there for a while. And we had no idea what was going on in the news. And when we came out, Disneyland had closed, and the NBA season was suspended, and our country was shutting down. Mm-hmm. And that's what we brought our son Thatcher into. There's a lot of uncertainty there, but it was the perfect timing for us because of the time I got to spend with my boy. It was amazing.
All right. Yeah, and they have another one along the way, so you're glutton here.
and the due date is I think November 18th or 19th.
Okay.
So a lot's going to happen in November.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting November for Barrett Reed, right?
Yeah.
So, well, it's good to get them both out of the way. Maybe you have another one that because mine are 8 years apart, and so it's like once you think you're out of that time of your life,
you're right back in it.
Do it all over again. So, no matter how you do it, it works. If families figure out a way to make it work, no matter what it is. So Barrett, you're shaking it up here because you're taking on an incumbent, and it's district elections, and you're presumably gonna put up a formidable challenge. You're on the planning commission, which is shows that you're connected, you're involved, you're serious. Sometimes candidates come out of the woodwork and like, I want to run, but you're deeply connected to a lot of people in the community. So it's going to be a very competitive race for sure. So I just want to sort of, give you kind of last word, just sort of talk a little bit about, whatever we haven't talked about. Why should people look at you, look at your candidacy? Why are you the right person for the right time?
Absolutely. I wrote something down that I read a few days ago. And this is more specific to District 4, but we can all relate to it in Santa Barbara. It has to do with the American Riviera.
Okay.
So this was written in 1980 by the Santa Barbara Board of Realtors. Okay. And they said, protecting the Riviera. And that's kind of the core of my district. I live on Eucalyptus Hill, but would still consider myself a part of that. Protecting the Riviera against the incursions of greedy land developers, non-conforming architecture, and uncontrolled population trends has been the responsibility of the venerable Riviera Improvement Association since it was founded in 1930. From that time to the present, the Riviera Association has kept a vigilant monitor on City Hall, safeguarding the best interests of its resident taxpayers. I've got one last quote to read, but to all District 4 residents and to all those residents in Santa Barbara that won't be voting for me, I give my word that I will do everything to safeguard the best interests of our resident taxpayers. And to end, one District 4 resident back in 1980 made this statement: "We know how lucky we are not to have to go to Europe to enjoy the Riviera lifestyle. We've got a better Riviera right here in Santa Barbara. And I will do everything I can to fight for what makes Santa Barbara so great, so special. I will fight to preserve our neighborhoods and to preserve the American Riviera." So thank you, Josh, for having me here. And thank you to all the residents of this great city. I not only love, at this point, I love this city, but I love the people of this city. I absolutely do. And if that wasn't the case, there's no way I would be making this decision to run. So I'm very honored, and to be on Planning Commission was one of the greatest honors of my life, and to serve on City Council would be as well. So.
Okay. Well, great, Barrett. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this exciting information. And a year ago when we did that first podcast, when I was just sort of saying, "Hey, you want to talk for the show I'm about to start?" I really appreciate you taking the time to do it at that point too, because
thank you, Josh.
It showed you were caring about these issues long before you were running for city council. So yeah. I appreciate it, and good luck to you. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more,
Indeed.
for the campaign between now and November. So thanks a lot, Barrett. Good luck.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you.